I wait till Saturdays to go through every single matchup to find the must start and sit wide receivers, so we've got plenty of times to get injury updates, and we've got a lot of them to go through. So make sure to go down there, drop a like on this video, and subscribe to the channel to show your support, because I'm one of the only fantasy YouTubers working on a Saturday to get you this content. So let's go down to our first matchup, the Jacksonville Jaguars at the Chicago Bears. This one is overseas, so neither one has an advantage, really. Actually, Jacksonville might have the advantage because they play overseas every single year. It's at 8:30 in the morning on Sunday. Make sure your lineups are set by tonight. DJ Moore is a must start for me personally this week. With DJ Moore, he's starting to find the groove, finally with Caleb Williams that we have been waiting for the entire year. I think that DJ Moore is in great position again against the Jacksonville Jaguars defense here, because their defense is not particularly strong. They're giving up tons of points to everybody they play, and I like the chances that Caleb Williams has another strong game, and of course DJ Moore is that number one there. Brian Thomas Jr., I consider him a decent flex option, but this is not a good week for Brian Thomas Jr. I gotta tell you guys. Brian Thomas Jr. is the wide receiver one in Jacksonville. There's not a question about it. But the problem he's going to face this week is going up against the Chicago Bears secondary. That's a tough secondary to go against. So I'm not fully in on Brian Thomas Jr. I'm not out on him necessarily because I know he will get the target share and he's got the big play upside. But Brian Thomas Jr., there's going to be better weeks for him. So I would consider him a play over Rome Odunze, who I do prefer over Keenan Allen at this point. Rome Odunze, of course, is the most explosive player at this point of his career. He looks to be building chemistry with Caleb Williams, and he looks to be, at this point, a more important target to Caleb Williams than Keenan Allen. I would say Keenan Allen's still a low-end flex option if you've got him, but Rome Odunze has passed him up. There's always that chance that Keenan Allen has like 10, 11 targets or something like that. We haven't seen it since he got injured, so I'm playing Rome over Keenan Allen. And I would play Christian Kirk over Keenan Allen too. Christian Kirk he's actually done pretty well the last several weeks. Again, I do not like the matchup here, but maybe it's a situation where the Bears defense takes more seriously Brian Thomas Jr., and that may leave Christian Kirk open for more opportunities over the middle of the field. It's possible. We'll have to see what happens. I still think he's a decent play option, though. And then Gabe Davis is already injured in this game, and he hasn't been good anyways, so I'd not play Gabe Davis regardless. Tampa Bay at the New Orleans Saints this week. Chris Godwin is a must start. I went through this on a new video that I did this week about must start guys that maybe don't seem like must starts since 2021. Chris Godwin has only had one game below double digits against the New Orleans Saints, and the reason why, we'll talk about it with Mike Evans, because Mike Evans, conversely, has only had one game above 10 fantasy points since 2021 against New Orleans. Why is that? Because Marshawn Lattimore lives rent-free in Mike Evans' head. It's ridiculous. He gets the best of him every time. Mike Evans sometimes doesn't even finish the game because he gets ejected. But because Mike Evans is Mike Evans, I have a hard time putting him below Chris Olave with Spencer Rattler. The one thing I will say is I prefer Olave over Rashid Shaheed, because with Spencer Rattler earlier this week, he said, yeah, if Chris Olave's on the field, I'm going to find him. I'm going to throw him the ball. That was actually a little encouraging, considering that the one thing Chris Olave had to hang his hat on the last 2 years was the target share. Well, he hasn't gotten that this year. Maybe with Spencer Rattler it changes this week, and it's a good opportunity because the Bucs defense is not good. So I like him more than Rashid Shaheed this week, because Rashid Shaheed gets those deep balls from Derek Carr, who can still throw the deep ball. And I don't really like Spencer Rattler, the player, very much. But of course, we'll have to see. And I do think that Rashid Shaheed can be played still. The Washington Commanders at the Baltimore Ravens this week. I don't think there's a must start in this group. I do prefer Terry McLaurin over Zay Flowers, mainly because I think that Terry McLaurin is in position where this week, I do think the Commanders are going to lose pretty easily. And so I think that Terry will have more opportunities for deep shots this week. Like, I don't think that all of a sudden they're going to be ignoring him on the deep shots. You know, Noah Brown got healthy this week, so there won't be Diami Brown. But Terry McLaurin, I do think, is a pretty solid start at this point. I don't think he's a must-start considering the matchup, and I do think they're going to get crushed. But he is a good play this week. And Zay Flowers, it's not very much different. Like, Zay Flowers is definitely going to get the targets, as he always does. But, you know, every single week is different with Zay. Sometimes he hits those ceiling games where he gets targeted down the field. Sometimes he doesn't. And I do think the Ravens are going to handily beat the Commanders this week, so I just don't know if I see this big explosion game from Zay Flowers in this particular week, but it could happen, so I do think that they are both playable. And again, I'm not playing another Commanders receiver this week. And Rashad Bateman, I'll mention him because he's actually shown his face. He's popped out of the shadows for a couple times. I'm not going to play Rachaad White yet, though. The Arizona Cardinals at the Green Bay Packers is our next matchup this week. And Jaden Reed, of course, is a must start. Marvin Harrison Jr., of course, is a must start. Marvin has a pretty low floor game last week, right? That was a bad performance from Marvin. And, I'll be honest, you can blame Kyler all you want. I watched that game last week. Marvin just didn't look very physical. He was getting press coverage, out of bounds, basically. That corner was, kind of shifting him out of bounds. It's that dude is huge. Should not be happening to that guy. So with Marvin, I'll cut him some slack because I do think that there are games where Kyler definitely does not play his best. And sometimes it happens, sometimes it doesn't. But Kyler, especially in the second half, was on last week, and he just didn't do it. I'm going to take him against the Packers secondary, mainly because there's a good chance that Jair Alexander does not play again for the Green Bay Packers here. So I do think that Marvin Harrison Jr. has a good opportunity. I'm just not going to personally sit him because he still is the wide receiver one. Jaden Reed, of course, you play him. He's got the major ceiling with Jordan Love. Didn't hit last week, but it wasn't bad. It wasn't like Marvin Harrison Jr. bad. So Jaden Reed doesn't leave your lineup. And then as far as flexes go, I prefer Michael Wilson in this matchup. Michael Wilson is becoming more involved in this Arizona offense. And listen, when Kyler Murray's on, he can support two wide receivers in fantasy. This is a fact. So with Michael Wilson, he's a second-year player who's only gotten better over the weeks. So I do think that he's a better play than Dontavian Wicks and Romeo Doubs, in my opinion. They're not far off of each other. Wicks has the higher ceiling, right? Doubs probably has a higher ceiling. You haven't seen it this year, but he definitely, I think, has the higher ceiling than Michael Wilson compared to what we've seen from Michael Wilson. Wicks is not my favorite play, and I said this last week, before Romeo Doubs got suspended last week, I wasn't particularly interested in Dontavian Wicks as a must-start, but then obviously once Doubs got suspended, I was like, okay, the opportunity's there. Well, the opportunity this week, it's basically the same as last week, except Watson may play. I don't think he's going to, but he has an outside shot of playing from what I've read. I'd still prefer Wicks over Doubs a little bit at this point because, he got suspended for a reason. They're not saying, obviously, but obviously there's some strife there between him and the team. So I still prefer to play Wicks over Doubs, but Doubs still does have that touchdown upside. And then I'm not playing Greg Dortch in this game. The Indianapolis Colts at the Tennessee Titans this week. Again, I don't really feel like there's a must-start in this one either. Calvin Ridley's my favorite option, mainly because Anthony Richardson is apparently going to be back, barring any setbacks. Woo freaking who. Congratulations, I'm sure we're all super happy about that in fantasy football, seeing Anthony Richardson come back with a less than 50% completion percentage. All those Indy wide receivers, it's over. It's over for those guys. So Calvin Ridley, because of Will Levis being in there, he actually can hit on some big plays. Levis is not good, but he actually can hit on big throws. So I do think that Calvin's the best play of the group. But again, the Colts options here, they're not good. Honestly, I've considered putting Alec Pierce over Josh Downs because he seems to have the most opportunity with Anthony Richardson because all of Richardson's completions are basically 40 yards down the field, which is Alec Pierce's bread and butter. So I honestly consider putting Alec Pierce above Josh Downs. I don't blame you if you do. I put Josh Downs because of the fact that he's kind of a target guy. So in a full PPR league, it makes sense to do that. But obviously, watch his injury. He is currently questionable in this game. And the funny thing is, Michael Pittman Jr., the reports have been all over the place. He was going to be doubtful. They considered putting him on IR. And then a report later yesterday came out, well, he's actually going to try to play through it. It's okay, so apparently he's going to play. I'm not playing him. I'm not playing him because Michael Pittman has had the worst moments with Anthony Richardson, and I just don't want to play him if he's going up against L'Jarius Sneed. I just do not view it that way. So I'm going to sit Michael Pittman Jr., and I'm going to also sit DeAndre Hopkins as well. The Houston Texans at the New England Patriots. Stephon Diggs is must start this week. Without Nico Collins, Stephon Diggs, his role is already pretty set in stone in this offense. Like, he gets a lot of high percentage throws. He gets a lot of targets at the red zone. But I do think there's going to be some more downfield targets for Stephon Diggs as well. And I feel very similarly to Tank Dell as well. I think Tank Dell is actually a pretty high-end flex option that I would personally play over all of those receivers we were just talking about. Calvin Ridley, Josh Downs, Alec Pierce. I'd play Tank Dell over all those guys. I think he's going to have a lot more downfield opportunities. And again, it's hard to remember at this point because it's been so bad. But don't forget, last year, Tank Dell had great chemistry with CJ Stroud. CJ has always talked about Tank Dell as, like, in context of, like, being his favorite receiver low-key. Tank Dell just hasn't done it yet. I think this opportunity is opening up for him, and he's actually going to take advantage of it. So I've got Tank Dell in my lineups in a couple different leagues, and I would advise you to do the same personally. Now, I will say, you still can't play a Patriots wide receiver, even with Drake May being out there. Let's just watch this one and see how it plays out, because it's not like Drake May was looking like a sharpshooter in the preseason, right? And I get it, it's preseason, but the Patriots offense is so horrible. Their offensive line is horrible. Their offense as a whole just doesn't run an advanced offense. So I just don't see upside until I actually see it, I guess, with the Patriots offense. So I'm not playing any of their wide receivers. The Cleveland Browns at the Philadelphia Eagles this week. A.J. Brown, Devonta Smith, they're back in the lineup. You throw them back in without thinking about it. Honestly, like, this is a great opportunity too. Off the bye week, taking on the Browns defense that is ravaged with injuries at every single level. The Browns are a defeated team, right? So you just have to take advantage of anybody that you have who is playing the Cleveland Browns. I'm expecting a major game from A.J. Brown, and I'm expecting a pretty good ceiling game from Devonta Smith as well. Maybe 15 to 20 fantasy points. You put both them in your lineup this week, and of course Amari's always flexible, and theoretically the matchup should be really good, but Deshaun Watson sucks. You guys are going to hear me talk about it all. It's like going to be all year, because Deshaun Watson is so bad. He's so horrible to watch play football. So it just makes me not really want to play Amari that much. It's uninspiring to play him, but obviously he's got the big play upside. He's already shown it this year. So against the Philadelphia Eagles, there is definitely a chance that he has a game, and I will play Amari Cooper in some situations, but if I can afford to sit him, I'd probably shoot for another option. And then Jerry Jeudy, I'm just not going to play him. I'm back off of him at this point. The Los Angeles Chargers at the Denver Broncos. Lots of points in this one. Look at the Vegas line. I'm expecting points. Vegas is expecting tons of points out of this matchup, so you don't play any of the wide receivers here as must starts. The best guy by far to me is Ladd McConkey. Now, I want to say this. I've for weeks been talking about the difficulty of wide receivers going up against Denver because of Pat Surtain. And listen, Ladd McConkey's kind of the exception to this one, because Ladd McConkey is the majority of time a slot guy in the NFL. For the Los Angeles Chargers, he's a lot of slot. So Pat Surtain, I don't think that he's going to be following around Ladd all game. I actually think the worst of it is going to be with Josh Palmer or Quentin Johnston. That's who I think is going to get the worst. That's why I'm saying don't play either one of those guys, because they're not good enough to overcome that. But Ladd McConkey is still going to have opportunities, so he is still the best start by far in this one to me. Sutton, unless he hits on a touchdown, it's just not going to matter. Like, Sutton's stat line is always like 50, 40, 30 yards receiving, and if he gets in the end zone, great. But if he doesn't, it's really not worth very much. So he's still playable because he's the wide receiver one, but I don't like this matchup, and I don't really like Courtland Sutton that much in fantasy as is. And then I will mention the name Troy Franklin, because two of their starting wide receivers are out of this game. So Troy Franklin theoretically should have more opportunities in this game. We'll see how that works out. I'm throwing the name out there because Bo Nix and Troy Franklin were teammates at Oregon together that had very good chemistry. So we'll see how it plays out in an NFL game. I'll throw the name in there, but I'm not playing him this week. The Pittsburgh Steelers at the Las Vegas Raiders this week. Jacoby Myers is a must start. If he plays, I am playing Jacoby Myers. Obviously, we're going to have to watch this one throughout the day. He's been in and out of practice. This guy is, I think, in a great position to win if he ends up doing it. The last 2 weeks, the Steelers have been getting crushed by Indy receivers and Dallas receivers. I like Jacoby Myers in this game a lot. I called him a must start on that video I did the other day. So really, it just comes down to if he plays. Please play, because I really want to play him in some leagues. And then George Pickens is a decent flex. I mean, the matchup should be really good. The matchup should be excellent for George Pickens, but this team is dealing with drama again with George Pickens, and the Steelers are starting to crumble, as I have been saying all week. So the Steelers and any of their options, I'm just really kind of out on at this point. But that being said, of course, George Pickens, big plays there, and opportunity probably will be there this week. So I'll go Pickens at a decent flex option. And then Trey Tucker, I'm just not going to play another Raiders receiver. The Atlanta Falcons at the Carolina Panthers. Drake London must start. No question about it. This is a great matchup. Drake London looks fantastic. Deontay Johnson, I'm putting him right back in. I don't really worry about it because Deontay last week got taken out by a great defense. Atlanta's not bad, but they're not the Chicago Bears. So I've got a lot of confidence in Deontay if he plays. I don't really see a reason to believe he won't play in this game. So ultimately, I think he does. But Deontay Johnson, I just don't have a fear based on last week, them playing a top-tier defense, him being shut down like that again. And then Darnell Mooney, I think, is a really high-end flex option. I don't think that you have to start him. Like, I'd personally prefer Deontay over Darnell Mooney. That's like the move I'm making here personally. Darnell Mooney's a very high-end flex option that I would play probably over most guys. Like Pickens, of course, I'd play him over. Ladd, I would play him over. I'd play him over Amari. I might play Tank Dell over Darnell Mooney. That's kind of his line right there. So very high-end flex options, but not must start. It's kind of the way I view Mooney because, again, Kirk's not going to always throw for 500 yards, but I do think this is a good, strong game for Kirk Cousins here. And Xavier Legette, I'm just not going to play him. That guy is just, he's on a clown show team, and the majority of the time, like, he's either injured or not catching all of his passes. So I'm just going to wait until we have a good breakout game again from Legette to play him against a tougher defense. The Detroit Lions at the Dallas Cowboys. Amon-Ra St. Brown, CeeDee Lamb, you fire them both up. I get it. CeeDee's been a little bit disappointing. You just do not sit CeeDee Lamb, especially in a high upside matchup like this one here. And then Jameson Williams, I prefer him over Jalen Tolbert this week because I think that there's going to be tons of points. Like, the Lions off a bye week facing the Dallas Cowboys defense, I just don't know how they get stopped. I really don't. Like, I really would be shocked if we saw the Lions punter more than 3 times this game. Like, I think 3 might be a high number, honestly. So I've got Jameson Williams above Tolbert, but I do think Tolbert's a relatively good start. I called him a start this week on that video as well. And listen, it's not because he's a must start in like an 8-team or 10-team format. Like, that's not what I'm saying. If you're in 12-team, 14, 16-team leagues, I think that Jalen Tolbert's a great play this week because, again, the weakness of the Lions defense is their pass defense. So I do think there's a good opportunity for Tolbert, especially as he seems to be continuing to build chemistry with Dak, and he's running a full route tree. So I do like Jalen Tolbert in this one. The Cincinnati Bengals at the New York Giants on Sunday night here. Jamar Chase is obviously must start. He's on fire. You fire him up. T. Higgins is my favorite option at the flex position because I do think that he's always got the potential for that type of game last week. Not saying he's going to do it again. The Giants actually are not a slouch defense. They actually are not a pushover. So I do think that there's an opportunity here with T because the Bengals are throwing the ball extremely well. But T. Higgins is not a must start by any means just because of the fact that he has a wide range of outcomes here. Darius Slayton is the better play still, in my opinion, than Wan'Dale. Obviously, if you don't know, Malik Neighbors is not playing in this game. I prefer Darius Slayton in this matchup here because I do think that Slayton has that. He's playing the more traditional downfield role for the Giants than Wan'Dale is, obviously. So I'm always going to prefer the guy who goes downfield for the Giants over Wan'Dale because, Wan'Dale is just going to get like 6 targets, or he'll get like 12 targets and like 8 receptions for 45 yards, right? Good PPR stuff. But you want to hit on those big plays, and Slayton did last week, and he's got a great opportunity again against the Cincinnati Bengals. Andre Yeshivas is going to go to my bench. He just doesn't look as relevant as consistently as he did before T. Higgins was there. But one thing's for sure, Joe Burrow's going to hit, and so is his projection on Underdog. At 0.5 total yards, that's what his projection is at. So you got to hit the higher on this one. Take it or leave it. If you leave it, you're going to miss out on a good one right here. And if you haven't taken advantage of it, go down in the comments, grab the link that's there, and use code FFN to sign up for Underdog, where they'll match your first deposit 50% up to $1,000 in bonus cash, and you'll be able to hit the higher on this sweat-free projection with Joe Burrow. Take it or leave it. It's going to hit, so that's your loss if you get out of it. And then the Buffalo Bills at the New York Jets on Monday night. Garrett Wilson is must start in this game. I do think that Garrett Wilson, like, obviously 22 targets doesn't lie last week. It's hard to see him getting 22 targets again, especially when there's a head coaching change and a play caller change in this offense as well. So we'll have to see what happens here. I'm ultimately going to play Garrett Wilson because he does have a good opportunity in this matchup. Keon Coleman is the guy that you want in Buffalo. Khalil Shakir is questionable for this game. A true questionable. It's a Monday night game that is not one that you particularly want to take the shot on. Matt Collins is also coming in questionable as well. So with Keon Coleman, it may just be an attrition game. Like he has to do something because everybody else is unavailable. So I do think that Keon Coleman, I prefer him over Allen Lazard, but I will say Allen Lazard has a touchdown upside and he's Aaron Rodgers' guy. So he does have upside just based on that alone. But I'll tell you this, like I'm not wild about any of them except Garrett Wilson here. But I do think that both Keon Coleman and Allen Lazard have big play upside in this matchup. So let me know how your lineup looks going into week 6. And if you want to see where all these wide receivers ranked in my top 30 rankings, click on this video right here.